Hi folks, it's Matt here from the Ask the R podcast, and today I've got a couple of special guests. So folks, I know it's been a while, but we're back again, and I'm delighted that I've got a couple of guests with me this week, which means that we're going to have a deep dive into arboriculture today. Well, hopefully a deep dive into arboriculture. So joining me today, I've got Peter Hain, who's the Senior Arboricultural Consultant here at ROAVR, and I've also got John Crawshaw, who is Principal Arb Consultant at Central London Tree Survey. So hello chaps.
Morning.
How are we doing? Oh, that's good. I can actually hear you on the microphone, so that's a bonus. Peter, obviously we've had you on the podcast before, and that was right back in the early days. And the audio wasn't the best on that one, was it? So
it's okay. Yeah, I think we've got some hardware upgrades today. So.
Yeah, that's it. I'm trying my hardest to my hardest to nail this one. So first off, for the uninitiated, I'll start with you, Peter, but for the uninitiated, who are you and what do you do within ROAVR?
So I'm one of the arboricultural consultants here at ROAVR. So we carry out tree surveys of all kinds for various different clients up and down the UK. I do a little bit of site work, not as much as I used to do in terms of surveys, but some with sort of site meetings with clients and tree officers and that kind of thing on site. Most of my time now is spent writing up reports and client meetings and things from my office at home in Cambridgeshire.
So you are genuinely not based in Scotland then?
No, genuinely not based in Scotland.
Because, I mean, with this podcast, we always try and keep it away from our own actual company and just try and add value to our listeners, which are architects and planning consultants. So we try and take a deep dive into all things ecology and arboriculture, but there will be a bit of a ROAVR twist on this one. But yeah, it's one of the questions that comes into the office all the time, isn't it? If you're based in Inverness, how can you help us in London, for instance?
Yeah.
Which brings us nicely over to you, John. So for the uninitiated, which there will be on here, tell us who you are and what your current role is.
Well, I'm John Crawshaw, and I've been involved in trees for the last 30 odd years now, which has gone pretty fast, I have to say. It's a surprise. But I've been running Central London Tree Surveys, obviously in and around London for the last 25 years. And it's been a great privilege, really, to work with such amazing clients, but incredible trees as well throughout that time.
Yeah, it's I go down to London once a month, I think it is, for various different business meetings and mastermind groups and things that I'm involved in. And on a sunny day, it's always a joy to walk through the city of London, not so much London itself, but the city of London, and see the quality and breadth and spread of trees that we've got in that part of the world is just incredible. And dare I say it, they do tend to be looked after to a higher standard than elsewhere in the UK as well.
They do. Yeah. And in fact, people have said to me, "Oh, you work in London, why? Assuming there's no trees there." But actually, it's such a green city.
Yeah.
The parks are incredible, but the street trees, the garden trees are just incredible, and some exotic species as well.
Yeah, there certainly is.
Every time we put a drone up in central London, it's a forest with some houses in there.
Yeah, no,
canopy coverage,
absolutely
is incredible.
Where was it? I was looking for a site the other day in London. I think it was just on Google Maps or something like that. And they've updated. There's a third-party provider. They're called Sky something or other, but it's really high-resolution satellite data. Yeah, and you don't realise, particularly when the camera angle is a bit more oblique, just how green London is as a city, which is pretty impressive, really. So, John, obviously, towards the end of this, we're gonna let the cat out of the bag, but we won't just yet. So, in terms of your career, how on earth did you get involved in arboriculture?
Well, I think I do remember, to cut a very long story short, going to my careers advisor at school, being a dyslexic, and not knowing what I wanted to do as a career. She was pulling her hair out, I think, effectively. And I said, what I enjoy doing is being in nature. I get a lot of solace. I get a lot of peace from trees and nature. And it was really that interest at an early age that sort of spiked my interest, not knowing that you could actually work with trees at that time. So a varied career of initially as a countryside ranger, but then as a tree surgeon on the tools, climbing trees, all that practical element, and then obviously as my body gave me the warning signals into consultancy.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Whereabouts were you? A countryside ranger?
Well, initially in York, around York.
All right, okay.
I was at uni in Hull, so that was an easy step to York, and some great habitat reserves around there. And then Warwickshire County Council.
All right, okay.
I set up a ranger team for them back in 1994.
Yeah, fantastic, because that's my background as well. I was a countryside ranger for Surrey County Council, which then became Surrey Wildlife Trust, so I went through Merriswood College.
Right.
And then from Merriswood College, after a brief spell in Dixon's selling cameras in Farnborough, I got a job on the countryside teams for Surrey County Council, and then became a ranger essentially, and was based down on the North Downs, all around that area. And it was good fun. It was great. And then did the tree surgery stuff separately.
Yeah. Well, I relate to that really. I think because then you're by default involved with trees and the management then of. So you initiate that kind of training or started the training, but I think the having that experience on the tools is absolutely crucial to.
It's so valuable. Yeah,
it's so valuable.
Yeah,
it gives you that sort of on the ground practical experience that you can take through the rest of your career.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and obviously both Peter and I come from that background because you were a tree surgeon as well, and
yes, I ran my own arboricultural contracting company for 10 years or so.
Yeah,
subby climber before that. Yeah,
I think if you know what's practical on the ground, you can relate that to real life and clients' needs and wants in practical terms. You know what's going to work.
Yeah. Absolutely, and there's some big challenges in that space, isn't there? Both for practical tree surgeons as well, and also for a arboricultural consultancy as well. So we have a funny one really, because although we're all professionals and we're working in this area, we've always tried to, within ROAVR, be aware of what goes on in our customers' minds and how they actually don't necessarily understand and sometimes aren't interested and don't want what we do anyway. They're only doing it because they have to do it. And there are some huge challenges in that space, and one probably potentially big challenge coming on the horizon is the new BS 5837 2025. Is it going to be 2025?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
So the British standard essentially is a set of guidelines which are based around trees and planning and what can and can't happen, or what should and shouldn't happen when you're considering trees as part of a development proposal. And the last guidelines, I think it was 2010 and then 2012, or was it? No, it was before that.
2005.
Oh, that's right.
2023, 998. I always get confused.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So 2005, then 2012. So we're well overdue. Yeah. Well overdue. A change on that. Have you got any thoughts on what might be coming with that, John, or have you just not looked at it?
I hope it'll be pragmatic. I think that's my underlying thoughts, is that it's going to be workable for both consultants and clients in a very understandable, not overcomplicated way.
Yeah.
I think there sometimes with these things there's too much overthinking really, I think there are some aspects of the current standard which should be reviewed. Obviously, I won't go into detail, but I hope someone's given it some real thought.
I've been following it a little bit on LinkedIn, and there seems to be a pretty strong team involved with it at the moment. All the names that you would think that would be involved in it are so, and a good a good spread of experience across the UK. So obviously, the London-based projects, which can be extremely complex in terms of root morphology and exactly what's going on there with the trees, right out to I don't know whether I've seen anybody on the advisory team that's based in Scotland, but I'm sure there will be, because there are obviously massive regional differences across the UK. Well, have you got any thoughts on 2025?
Well, the draft dropped for public consultation last night. I've got it sitting here on my laptop. I've had a quick scan through, but I'm not going to go into that in too much detail now.
No.
Until I've really digested it properly.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I guess there's going to be a lot of potential knock-on challenges for arboricultural consultants in terms of the way they do business, the equipment they use and things like that as well, because it's such a narrow niche what we do. You tend to find that all the supporting services around that, particularly software and in some cases hardware as well, is still running software from the late 90s, early 2000s, which is one of the reasons why we've developed our own in-house systems so that we can sort of sidestep that. So that's good. So
I think if you don't mind me butting in,
no, go for it.
I know we discussed informally yesterday about the clarity between and the relationship between the consultants, the clients, and the local authorities, and some of those disparages between local authorities and their understanding of the standard. So I hope to see that they all get some clarity from it, so that everybody is kind of singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of this is to do with funding in local government. The number of LPAs we deal with that don't have a tree officer in post, or they subcontract that consultancy role out to a large external firm, not naming any names. It's a stopgap that I can see why they've had to put those in place. If you're in local government and you're deciding whether to put a tree officer in post or whether to provide social services, that's an easy decision, isn't it? But long term, for the health of the nation's tree stocks, it's not a good way to go. So hopefully in the next few years we'll see a bit more money trickling into local governments and more resources for tree departments and tree officers. I would like to see a really experienced tree officer in post in every LPA. It's going to be good for us, it's going to be good for the trees, and ultimately good for our clients as well.
Exactly, and I mean that is the way it should go, and it is exactly the same problem in ecology as well. There's a lot of local authorities that don't have an ecologist in post at the moment, and they're using external consultancies to support them through planning advice. And unfortunately for our customers, what that means is quite often is the advice is extremely heavy-handed, and there isn't much pragmatism there. So how as a consultancy to try and build relationships with local authorities to ultimately make their life easier. Nobody's trying to get one over on anybody. What you're trying to do is build a business is built on human relationships, and you're trying to build a sustainable relationship with these people so that it just makes everybody else's life easier. And I know historically and anecdotally there's always been favourite consultancies in certain areas, and if a report lands on a planning officer's desk from somebody they know, that does tend to carry a little bit of weight. But that, anyway, well, it's a different conversation for a different time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, thinking about your sort of arboricultural career to date, John, what's the element that you've most enjoyed up to this point?
I think I've most enjoyed the freedom of the job, really, because no 2 days are ever the same. Obviously the tree situations are always different. The challenges are always different. That's always suited my personality, that kind of problem solving. But the mundanity of things being the same never sits well with me. So I've enjoyed that. The clients have been incredible, I have to say. 1 or 2 difficult ones along the way, but by and large, pretty good. And I think I do feel like I made a difference.
Yeah.
I think it has been a privilege working with trees, because I feel obviously as a tree surgeon I felled quite a few trees last time.
Yeah,
and
same. 1 or 2.
but I have worked out tentatively that I've probably saved and planted over 1 million trees in my career, which feels
something to be proud of, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And has the consultancy scene changed much since you've started?
It has, yes, yeah. I think there wasn't much competition in the early days, really, and I've seen that competition grow. Seen new firms, come into light, but I've also seen, the things in place, the safeguarding things in place, and obviously the British standards got tighter, and for good reason.
Yeah.
And do you think the quality of consultancy has improved over the last few years?
I think it has. It's been aided by the technology, I think.
Yeah.
Plans have become more consistent. In the early days, I was getting hand-drawn plans from architects, and trying to plot onto those. And I remember going out and doing my visits with paper and a pen.
Yeah,
me too.
A little sheet that I designed, and then coming back to the office and transferring that onto computer.
Yeah.
So the speed at which you can work has improved.
Yeah.
And I think that'll continue to change. Dare I mention with AI probably.
I don't think anybody misses weather writers, do they? They work brilliantly up to the point where you got some drips off your coat, and once you could do the whole survey for like 45 minutes, an hour, and then just towards the end you get those 3 or 4 key drips of water, which would then make the sheet of paper just obliterated.
Like this for an hour and 45
just
minutes.
horrendous. I actually, when I worked for or I trained under a chap called Scott Fairley in North Wales, and
Rain capital of the UK.
Yeah, exactly. And he used to send me all over Wales doing tree survey work, and I was a tree surgeon. I went through Myerscough and did their course there, but I didn't really have a background in consultancy, so I was learning as I went. And the whole paper side of things, I just thought there's got to be a better way. Got to be a better way. So in the end, I had usually a printout or a basic piece of paper that I would plot the trees on and put T1, T2 and all this kind of stuff with obviously immense accuracy, after pacing with my back to the wall of a house or something. And then I used an actual dictaphone with a tape in it, and then latterly a digital one, and then latterly an iPhone to record the thing. But then what happened then is if you didn't have a cheat sheet or a prompt, you would get the species, you get the height, you get the crown spread, and then you totally forget the DBH or something. And back then there was no way, apart from a digital camera, taking photos on site. So it was all in your mind. You're thinking, what, 450 mil, etc. So linking back to what you were saying, John, I think that accuracy, even from, dare I say it, potentially mediocre consultants, or maybe tree surgeons that might have expanded into arboriculture, and they're doing a lot consultancy, and they're doing a lot less surveys than perhaps we would all do. I think definitely the quality has gone up through the roof. So that's good. In terms of thinking about London boroughs in particular, and without naming any particular London boroughs or any particular projects, because we don't want to get ourselves into trouble, what's the biggest challenge you've had in terms of planning applications in London? So I'm thinking about specific arboricultural challenges rather than human challenges.
I think it's always worth mentioning the differences in the boroughs and their approach to tree protection. So that's a challenge. It always is a challenge. Again, going back to what we said previously, and slightly different emphasis on what's allowed and what isn't.
Yeah.
But looking at the arboricultural challenges, you don't know what's under the ground in London.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
A lot is usually the answer.
So air spade investigation has proved immensely valuable.
Yeah.
Radar, a lot of the boroughs weren't accepting radar information. It's spurious style, but I've used it. And surprises under the ground, hidden railways.
Yes. Hidden rivers.
Hidden rivers. All that bomb waste. So the fact that trees are actually surviving as good as they are in those conditions is incredible, really, and testament to nature, I think.
We had there was a statue. I don't know whether you were
just before I started.
Just before you started, there was a statue near the Natural History Museum that was being moved, relocated, installed, etc. And we don't have ground penetrating radar. We've never gone down that road because we don't have enough inquiries for it. So we used one of the well-known consultancies to provide that data, and it was impossible to draw any kind of conclusion from it because it was sold as if we would have a beautiful 3D model of the root morphology, and you could give some solid information and guidance to your customer. And I got it back, and it was a load of red and green lines on a piece of paper. And I'm a reasonably intelligent chap. I could work out what it was and what it meant. But I was interpreting it as an arboricultural consultant. There's absolutely no way a customer would have been able to interpret that. And I don't think it actually really gave us any usable information anyway. Invasive investigation using an airspace is really still possibly the only way to do it.
I think a hole in the ground is can tell you such a great deal of information. We had a project at the Royal Academy of Music where they effectively wanted originally to fell for London plane trees to create a road extension in terms of height to their front door, because there was like a 2 metre height difference. So obviously people with mobility issues, but people carrying large instruments into that building had a problem. So they wanted to raise the road and fell these trees. We actually devised a scheme where we could retain the trees, thankfully, but digging down into that ground there showed us that we had plane tree roots at 4 or 5 meters below. Below ground, and there wasn't much in that top. That magical 1,000 mil at the top where everyone thinks the roots are. Because actually the made up ground there was just so poor.
Which is you do wonder actually whether there is an argument. I know it's dependent on species and a lot of things, but maybe they'll address that in 5837 2025. But whether the whole RPA does become much more volumetric and three-dimensional and is actually dealt with a bit more seriousness in that manner as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, there are some sites up here. I tend to look after the Clerk of Works visits still in the north of Scotland, just as we're bringing up people through the ranks and getting them experienced enough to do that sort of site supervision. And there's one particular site that's been going on for 8 years now, a very, very high-end development where they're just sort of slowly developing it, completely covered with TPO trees. We were there right from day one doing the initial tree survey and trying to help design the layout. But of course the layout is being designed within a design team. There's nobody there from the construction team thinking about the actual practicalities of this, and I can input up to a point of how buildable I think the scheme is, but the actual reality of that when you start trying to build it out on site, and on the tree protection plan everything's nice and flat and level, because it is a nice flat level site, but then you don't realise that actually, although we on the plans have maybe put a cell web pathway through to a property, that actually all the other levels have been reduced, and there's no way of you can't have this path hovering in space, and it's I'm not sure what the missing part is there and whether we'll ever be able to influence it. But on larger schemes, when you've got this design team working with the tree data to come up with something that protects the trees, but it's all two-dimensional on the tree protection plan, it quite often, in my experience, if you are lucky enough to go back to site and do supervision, as you should, turns out to be unbuildable. And we can, as arboricultural consultants, experienced arboricultural consultants, we can foresee some of those challenges. You can see what's going to happen, but trying to get that message across and not be seen as being difficult, it's difficult, isn't it? But
I think the early British standards really were designed for greenfield sites.
Yeah.
A lovely oak tree in the middle of the field that you put a fence around the RPA. And jobs are good, and when actually in London it's far more complex. And actually, the British standard I don't think really suits those.
It's not really fit for purpose
those urban situations.
No, 100% agree with you there. Definitely.
12 times stem diameter multiplier is literally just plucked out of the air, as far as I can see. There's no scientific basis for that. There's no research. And there's some very interesting research being done on ancient and veteran trees now, which is showing viable root mass at maybe 30 times stem diameter. So particularly on those older trees, that 12 times stem diameter calculation is just nonsense.
Well, developers are not going to like that.
No. And it probably strays beyond what we're discussing today. But there is a danger, I feel. We all know that some species tolerate more damage than others, right? And well, the listeners might not, but that is the case. Sycamores in particular do not like any form of excavation alteration within their root protection area and beyond, and it has a dramatic effect on the health and vitality of the tree. Other species are a lot more tolerable. But is there not a danger that if that RPA figure gets bigger and more three-dimensional as we try and protect more trees, that developers are just going to remove more trees ahead of getting us involved?
The dilemma, isn't it? Instant you give somebody a drawing with RPA shown on it, it's almost like giving them a hit list, isn't it? If we want to build this, then these trees have to go.
I think the 12 times has actually stood well, to be honest.
As a rule of thumb,
I think it's been fair to the trees, and I think it's been fair to the developers. So it's a good happy medium. But I think some of the protection measures need to be workable on site. Because as soon as that contractor gets on there, they're wanting to change things to make it more workable. And if it's not workable, they're just not going to do it.
And the remediation as well after ground protection. It so rarely happens. We've got a site just up the road. They're lifting the ground protection plating at the moment, which has been on a compressible layer of wood chip, but still the level of compaction is pretty significant. And it is within the AMS that they're supposed to do decompaction, but they just cannot find a contractor that will do it in the far north of Scotland. So it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, and it's a real shame because there's some very high quality trees there. But there we go. So as we sort of approach the half-hour mark, let's sort of pull this together and wrap it up, because on the face of it, those listening to the podcast and we think, why on earth have we pulled in an arboricultural consultant from London into the office here in Inverness? And the reason for that is essentially that John he's a best-selling author, published author, and John's going to retire. And with John retiring, ROAVR are very kindly and luckily going to take over his client base and look after his clients moving forwards. So in the last couple of minutes or so, John, would you like to sort of sum up how you found yourself here and what retirement holds for you moving forwards?
It's a very exciting time, to be honest. I feel like I've done what I can do within the tree industry now, but my passions have turned to other fields, and I've always been a creative. I've always been dabbling in other creative outlets, but writing is something that I found within the last few years, and has become my true passion. So I've decided to explore that further. My books are selling now, which is great, which has enabled me to make that move. And I just feel the time is right to be able to do it. It's been difficult doing both. That juggling act, and there's very different thinking in terms of running a business, dealing with tree situations and writing fiction and spicy romantic fiction at that, which I found myself doing. It's time to make the jump. And I'm excited to be handing the reins over to you guys.
We're delighted that you approached us. It's the vast majority of John's clients are hopefully listening to this, but also located in the London area, and it's a place that, although ROAVR is based in Scotland, we are a nationwide company, and the vast majority of our work tends to be within the M25. And looking forward to getting stuck into some juicy projects moving forwards into the future. So,
well, one of the things that was really crucial for me was not to leave my clients in the lurch. They've been amazing to me, very committed over the years. I had a great working relationship with all of them. And the last thing I wanted to do was just say, see you, I'm off. That's it. And so, to show my gratitude in a way, I wanted a company that were equipped to, provide at least as good a service, if not better, than I've been doing, and ready to face the future challenges, future technology, and run with it. And you guys, I think, are well positioned to do that.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you
really
very much.
Appreciate the vote of confidence there.
Absolutely. And also my final point on that is that I have a real interest in personal development, mindset, all that kind of stuff. I've invested a lot in that. I can fully appreciate what a difficult decision it is to move from one arena into the other, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, when you decide to focus on one particular thing, you'll take it to the moon. So best wishes with that moving forwards.
Thank you.